Hello, viewer, and welcome to Worldview. This is a program designed to bring you up to speed with trending developments the world over. My name is Xavier Roberts, reaching you live from Uyo, the Akwa Ibom State capital. On our top stories today, Bolivia disproportionate military actions in Gaza. French President Emmanuel Macron to Central Asia as he seeks to strengthen ties in region where Russia and China enjoy strong influence. The Russian officials declare a raid alert in Crimean port city of Sevastopol in anticipation of further attacks from Ukraine. Details of these stories and more in a moment. Worldview today. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that a ceasefire in the Gaza war will not happen, as it would be to surrender to Hamas. Netanyahu also told a press conference that other countries must give more help in the struggle to free more than 230 hostages seized by Hamas in its October 7 attacks. He said the international community must demand the captives be freed immediately, unconditionally. Vowing that Israel would fight until the battle is won, Netanyahu said the army was going out of its way to prevent civilian casualties in Gaza.
To surrender to terrorism. Just as the United States would not agree to a ceasefire after the bombing of Pearl Harbor or after the terrorist attack of 9/11, Israel will not agree to a cessation of hostilities with Hamas after the horrific attacks of October 7th. Calls for a ceasefire are calls for Israel to surrender to Hamas, to surrender to terrorism, to surrender to barbarism. That will not happen.
Meanwhile, the armed wing of the Palestinian group Hamas has said that it will release some foreign hostages from Gaza in the coming days without offering more specifics. Qassem Brigade spokesman Abu Obaida announced the decision in a video addressed on Tuesday, in which he also promised to turn Gaza into a graveyard and a quagmire for Israeli forces amid increased ground operations. Obaida said they have informed intermediaries that they will release a certain number of foreigners in the next few days. Now, more than 230 people, including Israeli soldiers and civilians, as well as foreigners from numerous countries, were taken captive by Hamas and other Palestinian armed groups during a deadly assault on Israel on October 7 that Israeli authorities say killed more than 1,400 people, most of them civilians. Moving on now, the Palestinian Telecommunications Agency has said internet and phone networks were down across the Gaza Strip in the second such blackout in the besieged territory in less than a week. The Palestinian Telecommunications Company apologizes. NetBlocks confirmed that Gaza is in the midst of a new internet blackout with high impacts to the last remaining major operator. He said in a post on X that the incident will be experienced as a total loss of telecommunications by most residents. Now, protesters calling for a ceasefire in Gaza interrupted U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken during a Senate hearing. According to reports, numerous people stood in the crowd and repeatedly yelled, "Ceasefire now." The Secretary Blinken and U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin testified about the White House's $106 billion national security funding request. It includes $14.3 billion to support Israel's military efforts against Hamas. Standing up one by one, protesters waited for Blinken to begin his testimony before shouting over him again. The Secretary of State purged and lawmakers were forced to suspend the hearing several times.
I also hear very much the passions expressed in this room and outside this room. All of us are committed to the protection of civilian life. All of us know the suffering that is taking place as we speak. All of us are determined to see it end. But all of us know the imperative of standing up with our allies and partners when their security, when their democracies are threatened. That's what's happening now. We stand resolutely with them, even as we stand resolutely for the protection of innocent civilians.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Bolivia has become the first Latin American country to cut diplomatic ties with Israel over what it describes as aggressive and disproportionate military actions in Gaza. The country called for a ceasefire and said it would be supplying the blockaded Gaza Strip with aid. An Israeli official, Leo Hyatt, said the move was a surrender to terrorism. He accused the Bolivian government of aligning itself with the Hamas terrorist organization. But Bolivia's Deputy Foreign Minister, Freddy Mamani, said that the government had taken the decision to cut ties in repudiation and condemnation of the aggressive and disproportionate Israeli military offensive taking place in the Gaza Strip. Moving on now, the head of the World Health Organization, WHO, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, has welcomed the agreement to send some seriously injured people from Gaza into Egypt. Dr. Ghebreyesus said the organization has been working with Egypt's health ministry on plans for medical evacuations and will continue to support. He noted that WHO need an immediate acceleration in the flow of medical aid permitted to Gaza, adding that hospitals must be protected from bombardment and military use. In a separate development, Iran's supreme leader Ali Hosseini Khamenei has called on Muslim states to cease oil and food exports to Israel, demanding an end to the bombardment of the Gaza Strip. Khamenei said in a speech today that, according to Iranian state media, that the bombings in Gaza must stop immediately and the path of oil and food exports to the Zionist regime should be stopped. He suggested that the people of Gaza have mobilized the public's conscience by their patience, referring to the pro-Palestinian protests around the world. Israel has promised to wipe out Tehran-backed Hamas, the armed group that rules Gaza, following an October 7 attack that Israel says killed 1,405 people and saw hundreds taken as captives. Israel has launched an unprecedented bombardment of Gaza and imposed a siege on the enclave. The Palestinian authorities say almost 8,800 people have been killed. But Iran's clerical rulers have, however, warned Israel of an escalation if it does not end aggression against Palestinians, indicating that Tehran-backed proxies in the region are ready to act. In a separate development, the United States has said that it will reinstate Mauritania's benefits under the African Growth and Opportunity Act (AGOA) program following an eligibility review. The U.S. Trade Office said the reinstatement will be done in January next year after the Northwest African country made substantial and measurable progress on worker rights and eliminating forced labor. Mauritania's reinstatement follows U.S. President Joe Biden's announcement to terminate the AGOA benefits for Gabon, Niger, Uganda, and Central African Republic (CAR). Reports say the trade benefits were suspended in 2019 following concerns over workers' rights violations in Mauritania. In a separate development now, French President Emmanuel Macron is touring Central Asia as he seeks to strengthen ties in the region where Russia and China enjoy strong influence. The French leader met Kazakhstan's President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev today, holding talks to accelerate cooperation in key sectors. He will head to Uzbekistan next. Now, during the meeting with Tokayev, the pair signed a number of agreements covering economic sectors, including critical minerals, vital for clean energy technology. Said he would seek to give the partnership extra impetus. France is the fifth biggest foreign investor in Kazakhstan, and the long-standing relationship includes the massive Kashagan offshore oil field project partnered with French energy giant Total Energies, as well as a uranium mine run by French company Orano, the head of which is among Macron's delegation. The French energy giant EDF is also in the running to build Kazakhstan's first nuclear power station. Moving on now, Russian officials have declared an air raid alert in the Crimean port city of Sevastopol in anticipation of further attacks from Ukraine. The sirens went off in the city early on Wednesday. Traffic on the Crimean bridge linking the peninsula to Russia as well as sea transport was suspended. The alert comes amid a string of Ukrainian attacks in recent weeks in and around Crimea, which was seized and annexed by Moscow in 2014. Kiev's forces have struck a Russian airbase on the peninsula and the Black Sea Fleet command post in Sevastopol as Ukraine seeks to weaken Russia's control over the water. Moscow on Tuesday accused Ukraine of the attempted assassination of pro-Russian politician Oleg Zaryov in Yalta. The Crimean bridge was attacked in July. At the same time, amid disappointing results from Kiev's much-vaunted counter-offensive, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is seeking to rouse his country ahead of a winter campaign anticipated to be harsh. Now, in a separate development, police in Japan have ended an 8-hour standoff with a gunman at a post office in Tokyo by capturing the suspect after 2 hostages were freed safely. Authorities said the attack on Tuesday could be related to an earlier shooting at a hospital. The man had entered the post office with a gun in Warabe, north of Tokyo, about an hour after the hospital shooting in which 2 people were wounded in the nearby city of Toda. Footage showed an elderly man sitting between 2 captured gunmen when they stormed into the building, which they did about an hour after the second of the 2 postal staff who had remained in the building safely fled. The other hostage had safely walked out nearly 2 hours earlier. According to further media reports, the gunman's motive was not immediately clear, but police said they were investigating the hospital and post office attacks together because of a possibility they are related. They're also looking into a fire that broke out at the building, which is reportedly the suspect's apartment near the hospital around the time of the shooting. The media further said the suspect is an 86-year-old resident of Toda. After the break, Kenya's Mau Mau veterans seek royal redress from King Charles III. So stay joined to us for details on this and more right after this breather.